Hi everyone, this is Asim here. As you're all aware that this is week 6 and we have to talk about financial analysis and VLOOKUP. So in this lesson for today, I have gathered some data, which you can probably see on the screen, which is the screen 1, sheet 1, and then we got some data for sheet 2 as well. So particularly, I'm going to talk about this sheet 1 right now. So if you look at this, we can see that the title of these columns have been mentioned as person, product, and score. So I'm just going to highlight these ones for the future reference. And then we come back onto sheet 2, and the similar thing I'm going to do in here with the titles of these columns. Then I come back onto sheet 1 and I'm going to change the name of the sheet, which is going to be probably responses. And because if you look at the data, this is more about the responses. For response 6300, this is a combination of maybe the customer number, and RES represents response. So response of customer number, customer ID 6300, about the product 4, and they give it a score as scoring 1. So according to the type of this data, I have given the name of this sheet to responses. Similarly, when we go on to sheet 2, if you look at that, we have persons, gender, and age range, and I'm going to put up the name as probably the customer data just for the reference, right? So now, since we have to work on to this sheet in terms of analyzing it and then applying VLOOKUP and count ifs, I remember that in the previous few weeks we have been working on the count ifs. So I don't think that you will have to struggle a lot with that one. But for instance, if there is anything, I will be able to assist you with that. We get back on to the responses as I mentioned earlier. So if you look at this data, what I'm going to do, the first thing is I'm just going to highlight the data. There are several different ways to highlight it. If you just wanted to highlight just the data itself, so you can actually highlight the first few columns, and then you can drag it up till the end of the file. This is one way of doing it. The other easiest way of doing that one would be just to press Control A, and then you highlight the data. And then if you look at the top, you can see the Insert tab. You click onto that, and then you see the pivot table. You click onto this option and it will appear two different options for you. The first one and the second. The first option is from table range. So you click on that one, and then it appears that this is the first option is about the table range, and the second option is about new worksheet or existing worksheet. So these options actually dictate to you that which option do you want to use, whether you want to apply this pivot table onto the new worksheet or you want to apply that onto the existing worksheet. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to have onto the new worksheet, and then I press OK. So you can see that at the bottom there is a new sheet appeared, which is sheet 3, and on the right side you can clearly see that there are different options available. For instance, if you remember if you remember that when we pick up this data, and then there were 3 columns. One was the person, then product, and score. So the first one, person, I'm just going to click and drag into the rows here. Okay. Then I'm going to click on products, and these products are going to be into the columns. And then the score, I'm going to drag and drop to the values section in here. So you see that just with a couple of clicks, this pivot table has been created, and whatever kind of columns I wanted to display on my screen, I can just drag and drop, and it's up to my choice how I want this data to be represented. So the next step is just to make it easy for the future reference. I'm just going to change the name of this sheet. So I think I'm just going to have piv table. Okay. And then I'm going to have this data. So I'm just closing that one in here. Right. So in terms of this data, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight it again, and because my intention is to copy the data. Remember, I am going to, sorry, I think I'm just a bit too quick. You can drag, here we go. And this data, I'm going to copy this. So I think there is just a problem with this PDF. Right, let me just copy once again. So I'm just going to highlight this, and there we go. Thank you. And I'm just highlighting this data in here, not the entire table. I'm just highlighting. Let's just copy this one quickly, and this is going up to probably 450 something, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, here we go. So I think there was a problem with highlighting the last column. So what I've done is, when you created the pivot table, this pivot table has actually added all the responses given by, let's for instance, there is a first response by the customer whose number, the customer ID is 1547. So he or she has given the answers, rankings, ratings to product 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then the overall score has been added together by the pivot table, but I don't want that one. So what I'm going to do is I just highlighted the name of the customers along with the response, and then the product markings, the product ranking. So I'm just going to press Control C. I'm copying that one, and then I want you to create a new sheet. If you look at the bottom, I'm creating a new one in here, and then I'm creating on A2. Remember, not on A1. I'm just copying and pasting the data in here. Why I have not copied this on the first row? Because I wanted to give the names in here. So for instance, I wanted to give the name to P1. If you remember, in the previous table, that was product 1. This is your P2. And then similarly, well, we could have done this one in this way, as you can drag and drop up till the end. So you see, this is from P1 to P6. So I've just put up the name as product 1 is P1, product 2 is P2. So all these is exactly the same one as we have in the previous one. And this is something we have created just now. Okay, I don't think that it is going to cause any kind of a trouble for you to just make some few clicks. What you have to do is you go back into your responses, and then you highlight the overall data. When you highlight it, then you have to go into insert, then you go into pivot table, and then when you click onto the pivot table, then this will appear. And then from that option on the right side window, you have to drag and drop to different column names into different sections. And then once you have created that, you copy and paste this data into a new sheet, which is, in this instance, this is a sheet 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make little changes in here, like cosmetic changes. I highlighted the data, and then I go back into home, and I'm pressing this middle so I can see the data is inside in here. It's very well organized. Then I click on B, I right click. Remember guys, first I click on B, then I right click, and then I press insert, and then you can actually do the insert again. So what I have done is now I have created 2 extra columns between A and D now, so which is B and C. So the first one, I'm going to have the name as, for instance, the name is person. Okay. The second one, I would like to have gender. And the last one, the third one, I would like to have age. So what I have done is I have simply copied and pasted from the previous slide, from the pivot table, created in here, and created a new sheet. And then I have actually inserted 2 columns in here, column B and column C. So you have seen the procedure in here. Here, what I am going to do now, guys, this is what's listening in here, and you probably have to use this VLOOKUP in your actual coursework as well. So please keep that in mind, that this is one of the crucial parts of this exercise. So how I'm going to use this. Okay, so before I get into the gender, and I have to explain this further, what I want you guys to rethink and recall that when we worked on that, if we want to reference a data from any other sheet, if you remember, that there is a way to do that. So for instance, if you look at this one in sheet 4, within this sheet 4, I would like to reference some data into the responses. So for instance, if I want to reference this number, this cell, if you look at the column, if you look at the top, you can see this is C2. This C2 is actually the cell reference number of responses sheet. So if I go back into the sheet 4 And for instance, I want to reference that. So what I can do is I have to have responses, and colon. So once you write responses is the name of that sheet where you have an intention to copy some data from there. Then you have sign of exclamation, which I've just put in here, and then obviously you have to put in that C1, C2, or C3. So this is just, I wanted to recall that you are aware of that. But how we do that, I'm gonna do that once again in here. So you get back into gender. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to find out and copying the genders of all these customers, of all these persons, and put down in here, okay, in front of everything. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing is I'm just going to write equal and then VLOOKUP. So the time you write VLOOKUP, you press tab. What I'm going to do is, to make it easier and visible, I'm just going to increase the size of these columns so these are not overridden. So here we go, equal, then you have VLOOKUP, and once you have VLOOKUP, it says, if you look at this, now it is giving you options, because VLOOKUP has got multiple parameters. I believe there are 4 parameters. 4 parameters means 4 different types of values. So first value is the lookup value, means what do you really want to find out? Okay, I want to find out response 1547. Okay, so the time I click onto this one, the cell reference number for that is A2 appeared in VLOOKUP, the first lookup value. So then I have to press comma, and then it says table array, means could you please tell where is the table of all the persons along with other details. So probably if we go back into the responses, remember we go back into the responses, and into the responses I'm just going to highlight all the data in here. Okay, so I'm just going to, whether I can just spray control, I could have pressed, yes, so I can actually do this one. Sorry, my mistake in here. So you highlight, as I did the first attempt, you can highlight it and you keep going, and it might take a couple of seconds because the data is huge. It's a kind of a big data. So you can see on the screen that I'm just copying. Well, there are other ways as well. I could have given the reference number of the first cell and the last cell, and then it would have saved a lot of time, but I'm just doing it just for the clarity purposes, so you know that we have to highlight the whole data. Okay, and once you have highlighted the whole data, you come back into your, I think we have been working in the sheet 4, you come back into sheet 4, so you can see that response 1 equal, and that is the sheet appears in here, which is sheet 4. Okay, but this sheet 4 is a wrong sheet mentioned in here, because if you remember, we have copied the data from responses. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to okay, I think I need to increase the size for this one, so we can do that once again. Equal, VLOOKUP. Okay, so in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find out, because in the previous example, previous screen, I have mentioned you have to highlight the whole data, but to make it easy, in the second attempt, what we can do is we can go back into responses, and we can see the last cell reference number is C2662. Okay, and the first reference number is C2662 and A2. Okay, right, so we have A2, we get back into the customer data, sorry, we get back into the 4, and then we write in here equals VLOOKUP, and we write this one, and then we want to find out this one in here, and then we comma A2 colon, and then you have C2662. There we go. But remember, this is highlighting in the current sheet now, but this data has to come, this data has to be retrieved from responses file. So I'm just going to write here responses, so sign of exclamation here, and then you have A2 to C2662, and then you have comma, and after the comma, column index. Column index is the third option. Column index means here that you're looking for the gender, and in the actual responses, which column has got the genders in here. If you look at the responses, unfortunately in responses we do not have the genders in here, so we need to go back into the customer data and find out the genders. But if you look at this data, we have the genders in here. All right, so actually referencing to the responses is not the right option. So the right option was to actually use the customer data. Okay, so we come back into the sheet 4, and then we have to remove this, and we're going to use the VLOOKUP again, and I'm just going to write here equal VLOOKUP, and once this is in there, this is what we want to find, which is the first value. Then we have to go back into the customer data, and then we highlight all of these ones, right? And then this is going to be, again, I'm just using the old traditional classical method of highlighting all this data. So I have highlighted all of this, but remember, before we move on to the previous slide, here we look at that the gender here is in column B. Okay, so which is the second column. So we go back into sheet 4, and here we have to write column index is 2, which is actually the second column of the previous sheet. So if you look at that one, what we need to do is, instead of this sheet 4, we have to put customer data. Okay, sorry, this is customer data. There we go. So look at that one. So this has automatically retrieved the data from the customer data file. Remember guys, this is the customer data file, not the responses. I have done that one deliberately just to make you aware that when you have to find different kind of information, you probably have to look into the different worksheets. So here in this case, because the first option we wanted to find out was what is the gender of this respondent, of this person, so that appears as this is female. Okay, so once again, I'm just going to write in here, I'm deleting this, and I'm just going to do that once again for you guys, so you know that, right? So when you have to find the gender, simply what you need to do is look at your data. In which file do you find the gender? Whether it is in responses file or it is in customer data file. So the gender is actually in the customer data file, and in the customer data file, which column has got this data? Column B, which is actually in when you count it, this is column 1, column 2, and column 3. So we are going to give the reference of column 2, which has the gender. So come back into the sheet 4, write in here equal VLOOKUP. When we get into the VLOOKUP, remember the first parameter is for which customer we want to find the value. We want to find the value for 1547, right? But from which sheet? The sheet is customer data, so I'm just going to write here. Well, I don't need to write, I can actually simply go in there and I can actually copy, but usually Excel pick up the wrong file. So you can see that when we go back into the sheet 4, you can see that it has picked up sheet 4. It's not sheet 4, it should be customer data, CUSDATA. You can have your own names, whatever you feel like, but I have just got this one just in case. This is the customer data, A12C448, comma. The time you press comma, it says column index. Remember, I mentioned that column index in the previous file where you find the genders is column B, which is in reference to that. It is column 2. So you put 2 in here, and you close the bracket, and then here is you're gonna find this one in here, and then you are going to actually drag, and then you can see that automatically it is going to have all the references of the genders here now. So here we go. Brilliant. So everyone, you can all of you can see this, that how easy it is to actually get to apply VLOOKUP. So remember, VLOOKUP helps you to find the information and then help you in integrating that into the file. Similarly, we are going to apply the same formula into the age now. Remember, before you apply the formula, just double check. Where do you find the age? So let's get into the customer data. Do we find age here? Yes. Oh, let's double check with the responses. Do we see age here as well? No, we don't see the age in here. So we get back into the customer data, just double check. Fantastic. Come back into the sheet 4 and you write here equal VLOOKUP. and then you press VLOOKUP in here. Remember guys, the first thing is what you're going to find in here. You're going to find the age, right? So in terms of lookup value, we want to find the age of respondent 1547. So remember, it's the same thing we're applying, because what we do here is we find we take up one so to finding the gender and the age, and then we can replicate that. So A2 is the reference of VLOOKUP, but from which sheet we want to find. So remember, we mentioned about the customer data. So we are going to talk about this customer data, highlight this, and remember, in this sheet, the age is column 3, not column 2. Column 2 is the gender and column 3 is the age. So come back into the sheet, and then we probably change this one to customer data. And then we have comma, and remember it was column 3, not column 2. I press 3, and then I'm going to press enter in here. Look at that, this is the age range of 26 to 40. That was the person, belongs to this age range, and then we're going to drag and drop down to the end, so we can see that it is absolutely amazing that now you can see that the data is actually merged into one file, having gender, age, and then product 1, product 2, product 3, and product 4. So you can actually highlight this data, and once you have highlighted the data, obviously you can use this one. You can actually highlight all of this, and you can actually use this option to all borders, and now it looks like a pretty data in here. Right. Before we go on to the further one, I just wanted to make sure that you're all okay with this. We have used VLOOKUP, and we have actually merged different data together into one sheet. I hope you have enjoyed this, but if you get any questions, you can bring that in the seminar session. There will be a couple of more videos to explain a few other things in relation to, if you want to find out, for instance, about how many people are in the age range of 26 to 40. So we need to apply the counter on that. So I'm just going to create another video for you guys. But if in the meanwhile, up to now, if you got any questions, please feel free, come back to me, and I'm more than happy to answer those ones. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the lesson today, along with other videos. Thank you.